It's raining today, and I've been doing a fair bit of spring cleaning because I ordered some new furniture and everything needs moving around. I finally gotten myself a chair so that I'm not breaking my back every time I sit down to do a video. And my back is basically broken already, so. But it's raining today, and what is the perfect thing to do on a rainy day? Get back to reading. For those of you who were there for the first video, which is called I'm Starting a Cult, I went over the blurb, I went over some of the forewords and a little bit of the synopsis. We're going to continue with the synopsis since L. Ron Hubbard was a real pain in the ass about making sure you read every single word, even though most of the things he's written so far is just a mass of words that make absolutely no sense next to each other. But in the last video, we had talked about how I am so incredibly bored in the lockdown that I'm actually thinking about starting my own cult. So I was hoping to reverse engineer L. Ron Hubbard's work in Dianetics to see what he used to convince so many people to start his own cult. I had posted to my Twitter, and if you don't follow me there, all of the links are in the description. I had asked on my Twitter, if I were to start a cult, what would you like to, what would it be called? And I have decided on the name FAYTH, FAYTH. So all of you who are watching this video and who are interested in it, welcome to the faith. I'm not entirely sure what the tenets of the faith will be, but we have a name and we have followers. The last video wasn't a huge hit, but it was a hit, and I really enjoyed the response to it, so I want to continue diving into Dianetics. Two things that we were made aware of immediately was that all of the words matter, and if you don't understand a word, you need to read a passage over and over again until you understand exactly what it's saying. But because it is nonsensical, what you'll end up doing is just making sense of it just to move on. As we said, Ron, over here, is a real stickler for words and definitions. So we're going to continue. We actually didn't get through all of the synopsis, so we're going to finish the synopsis hopefully today, even though the synopsis is incredibly long for absolutely no reason. I'm just going to start. The dynamic principle of existence is survive. Yeah, I assume that that's the principle of all existence. It's not mind-blowing information. No behavior or activity has been found to exist without this principle. You don't fucking say, Ron. It is not new that life is surviving. It is new that life has as its entire dynamic urge only survival. It is new that life has as its entire dynamic urge only survival. Survival is divided into 4 dynamics. Survival can be understood to lie in any one of the dynamics, and by faulty logic can be explained in terms of any one dynamic. A man can be said to survive for self alone, and by this all behavior can be formulated. He can be said to survive for sex alone, and by sex alone all behavior can be formulated. He can be said to survive for the group only and for mankind only, and in either of these the entire endeavor and behavior of the individual can be equated and explained. These are 4 equations of survival, each one apparently true. Alright, I feel like he's getting to a point, but he hasn't made it yet. I don't think anyone is just sticking by one of these dynamics. I think all of them have a part to play in most people's survival. Thus motivated, the individual or a society seeks survival, and no human activity of any kind has other basis. Experiment, investigation, and long testing demonstrated that the unaberrated individual, the clear, was motivated in his action and decisions by all the above dynamics and not one alone. Okay, but that doesn't make anyone special. I think that everyone has, speaking of myself, except for maybe dynamic 2, which is like the potential of survival by creation of children and rearing, which isn't something that I have as a goal for myself at this current point in time. I think most people think of survival in terms of the self, sex, the, smaller groups, and of mankind. I don't think anyone thinks of survival as purely like self. Like, we're not living in the jungle. The clear, and this is like a highlighted term, it's got a capital C. The goal of Dianetic therapy can be created from psychotic, neurotic, deranged, criminal, or normal people. In that order? He demonstrates the basic nature of mankind, and the basic nature has been found uniformly and invariably to be good. Now, that is now an established scientific fact, not an opinion. Since the word good is extremely subjective, I don't know how that can be established as scientific fact. Words like good, bad, they're extremely subjective depending on culture, place, time. Also, they have so many variables. So I don't know how you can claim that the nature of mankind is uniformly and invariably to be good. I don't know. Like it seems like a complete sort of opposition to like a Catholic narrative where everybody's born in sin, and I understand that, but I don't know how you can claim that that's a scientific fact. It is 100% your opinion, Ron. The inhibition of one or more dynamics in an individual causes an aberrated condition, tends toward mental derangement and psychosomatic illness, and causes the individual to make irrational conclusions and act still in an effort to survive in destructive ways. Okay. I disagree, but okay. Dianetic technique deletes, without drugs, hypnotism, surgery, shock, or other artificial means, the blocks from these various dynamics. The removal of these blocks permits the free flow of various dynamics and of course results in a heightened persistency in life and a much higher intelligence. I don't know how that would be the case if your pure goal is survival. I don't know, A, how that will lead you to a more good life, because modes to survival aren't always the most moral. And secondly, I don't know how Dianetics will help that, because it's just gibberish. The precision of Dianetics makes it possible to impede or release these dynamics at will with invariable results. So wait, when I think survival, I don't think of it compartmentally. Like when I think survival, it just means survive, right? So you have like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know, whatever your base needs are, you meet those first and then you go up, right? And that includes like social needs and humanitarian needs and stuff like that, but they're much higher up. Like the base level needs are like food, water, the basic things you need to survive. And then it's like emotional, psychological, self-actualization, all of that stuff. But when I think survival, and when you're in a situation of survival, you're not compartmentalizing it, and you're not being like, oh, you know, I can impede myself and then release my social need to survive. You know, like, that's not, no, Ron, no. The hidden source of all inorganic mental disturbance and psychosomatic illness was one of the discoveries of Dianetics. The hidden source of all inorganic mental disturbance, which is not elaborated on, and psychosomatic illness was one of the discoveries of Dianetics. How did you discover a source that is hidden? Make it make sense. That the discovered source is the source requires less laboratory proof than would have been necessary to have proven the correctness of William Harvey's discovery of the circulation of blood. See, what he's done here is removed the fact that it's not been tested in a laboratory and it can't be proven in a laboratory, and then attached a very heavy name to it by saying William Harvey's discovery of the circulation of blood. Yeah, one of the reasons why he did that in a laboratory is because it needs, like, tests need to be done for things to be scientifically proven. This is bothering me. The proof does not depend upon a laboratory test with complicated apparatus, but can be made in any group of men by any intelligent individual. Intelligent individuals and groups of intelligent individuals have made really dumb assertions throughout the years. Saying that men with intelligence in a group can figure this out is not saying much. Because until it is tested and peer-reviewed and then established as a fact, it's not a fact. It just isn't. It's just highly questionable. And asserting anything different is just very, very suspicious. The source of aberration has been found to be a hitherto unsuspected submind, which, complete with its own recordings, underlies what man understands to be his conscious mind. Okay, we're reinventing the conscious mind here. The concept of the unconscious mind is replaced in Dianetics by the discovery that the unconscious mind is the only mind which is always conscious. The unconscious mind is the only mind which is always conscious. It's a literal contradiction. In Dianetics, the submind is called the reactive mind. I don't know why you have to change the language. You know, clearly we have a word for it because you've just said that the submind is the conscience and the unconscious mind is the one you think is the most conscious. You're being extremely confusing, but what could have cleared it up is if you use the language provided for you instead of making new terms and using a bunch of diagrams. I'm pretty lay when it comes to science, and I assume that most people who pick up this nonsense and read it and believe in it are pretty lay in science. I'm assuming. I don't know, because I myself am lay in science. So when you put a bunch of stupid terms to redefine things that already have names, it's very confusing. And you're gaslighting from the very beginning by saying that if you don't understand a word or if you don't understand a passage, it's your fault because you need to look up all of the words. Bullshit. This is bullshit. A holdover from an earlier step in man's evolution, the reactive mind possesses vigor and command power on a cellular level. It does not remember. It records and uses these recordings only to reproduce action. It does not think. It selects recordings and impinges them upon the conscious mind and the body without the knowledge or consent of the individual. The information that is not true. You can control all of your thoughts. Don't let Ron tell you differently. Your thoughts are your own and you have full control over them. The only information the individual has of such action is his occasional perception that he is not acting rationally about one thing or another and cannot understand why. There is no censor. This is where the creepy shit happens. When any recording and engram becomes reactivated, it has command power. It shuts down the conscious mind to greater or lesser degree and takes over the motor controls of the body and causes the behavior and action to which the conscious mind, the individual himself, would never consent. He is nevertheless handled like a marionette by his engrams. See, this is what I don't particularly enjoy about Scientology. There are some parts of Scientology that are truly fascinating and truly attractive as an idea, but it's more this, the idea that you, most normal people, don't have faculty over the actions that they commit, and that their actions are deeply rooted in things that have happened in a previous life, that cause them to behave in a way that they are now behaving, that everything is your fault and you have no control of it until you do this Dianetic thing, which then makes you liable for everything that happens to you, whether or not you are responsible for those things. And in some way, it starts off as an empowering message by saying oh yeah, you can use these tools to take over your mind and control all of your actions. But then later on down the line, it becomes everything that has ever happened to you, every wrong that has happened to you in your life, be it accident or not, wasn't actually an accident. You manifested it onto yourself at some point, and it's really, really gross and toxic. Handled like a marionette by his engrams. It's gross. Man has unwittingly long aided the reactive mind by supposing that a person, when unconscious from drugs, illness, injury, or anesthetic, has no recording ability. Right, this is just waffle. We've already gone over how, according to Dianetics, everything is recorded by the unconscious mind. The method which is used to refile pain is another discovery. Man has unknowingly possessed another process of remembering, of which he has not been cognizant. Here and there, a few have known about it and used it without realizing what they did, or that they did something which man as a whole did not know could be done. This process is returning. Wide awake and without drugs, an individual can return to any period of his entire life, which includes previous lives, providing his passage is not blocked by engrams. Dianetics developed techniques for circumventing these blocks and reducing them from the status of powerful unknown to useful memory. When you essentially interrogate someone to remember something that never happened, their brain will fill in the gaps, because the human imagination is not to be underestimated. The power of suggestion, the power of leading questions can cause people to fill in gaps in their memory that did not exist before. And this can be seen from, the way that people recollect memory, even things that actually happened. People can make up things the longer a memory has sat, because the human memory is not like a computer where it just files every single letter. So like the way that a computer records something is by, syntax and by character. It records everything to a T. Whereas with human memory, we don't remember every letter on a page of a book. We remember what we took away from it. We remember by interpreting meaning. So, for example, if there was a robbery in a bank, maybe I would not remember where everyone's coffee cup was, whereas a computer may remember that. But I would not, if an officer asked me that, that would be a leading question. Did the criminal have a coffee cup? Instead of just asking, was there something in the criminal's hand? It would cause you to wonder whether or not the coffee cup was there. And then if at the scene of the crime there were coffee cups around, it may suggest to your brain that the criminal must have had a coffee cup because there were coffee cups everywhere, So this way that they've phrased memory as something accurate, as recordings, is extremely misleading, because the human memory does not work like that. You can implant false memories into people using suggestion, using leading questions, and you can definitely do that to people who are already vulnerable, already in a state of trauma, and encourage them with suggestion and with leading questions to think about a previous life that never existed. And it's fucked up. It's really, really fucked up. The technique of therapy is done in what is called a Dianetic reverie. The individual undergoing the process sits or lies in a quiet room accompanied by a friend or professor therapist who acts as an auditor. It is a stranger, not a friend. The auditor directs the attention of the patient to the patient's self and then begins to place the patient in various periods of that patient's life merely by telling him to go there rather than remember. Exactly. Rather than open memory, you lead them. That's not going anywhere, that's implanting false memories. All therapy is done not by remembering or associating, but by travel on the time track. Every human being has a time track. It begins with life and it ends with death. It is a sequence of events complete from portal to portal as recorded. The conscious mind in Dianetics is called by the somewhat more precise term of analytical mind. Stop! This already has a name. It's called the conscious mind, Ron. Just because people sit in a chair while you interview them for an uncounted number of hours while they make up bullshit so they can leave that room does not mean you have discovered anything. It just means you have interrogated people, mostly against their will, in usually horrendous conditions. It's fucked up. You haven't discovered anything. You've just coerced people into saying a bunch of shit. The auditor directs the travel of I along the patient's time track. The patient knows everything which is taking place, is in full control of himself, and is able to bring himself to the present when he likes. No hypnotism or any other means are used. Man may not have known he could do this, but it is simple. Yeah, but he can't leave the room until the auditor says he can, right? The auditor, with precision methods, recovers data from the earliest unconscious moments of the patient's life, such as unconsciousness being understood to be caused by shock or pain, not mere unawareness. The patient thus contacts the cellular level engrams, returns return to them and progress through them by the auditor, the patient re-experiences these moments a few times when they are then erased and refilled automatically as standard memory. So there's a lot of focus on reliving memories or false memories through shock and pain, which is gross if you think about it, because it would mean that they are reliving trauma that they have actually experienced and then also living through trauma that never happened because of the power of suggestion and because of the leading questions that an auditor might ask. It's fucked up. Like the retrieval of these memories or recordings from a previous life or a past time, which never happened, just to be clear, you have to experience and recollect those memories by re-experiencing pain, because you think you've already gone through it, re-experiencing pain that you never needed to. You never needed to experience that pain because it never happened. And you are convincing yourself of that shock and of that pain. And then the auditor is like healing you of that because he's reminding you of what had happened to you or what you had done when you probably had never done it, especially if he's talking about a previous life. Prenatal memory had long been an accepted fact since memories of the womb were agreed to influence the adult mind. I am not sure that is true.
According to Wikipedia, fetal memory is vulnerable to certain diseases, so much so that exposure can permanently damage the development of the fetus and even terminate the pregnancy by aborting the fetus.
Okay, there's an article from Live Science saying that fetuses have memories. You probably recall little days in the womb, but a new study suggests that short-term memory may be present in fetuses at 30 weeks of age. The new study tested how fetuses in nearly 100 pregnant women responded to a specific stimulus, in this case a vibroacoustic stimulation, which is a very low sound that makes a vibration. The researchers observed the reaction using an ultrasound. When the fetus first receives the stimulation, it is startled. That is hysterical. But after repeated trials of the same stimulation 30 seconds apart, the fetus gets used to the sound and doesn't react. A normal fetus of about 30 or 32 or 34 weeks would stop responding about 13 or 14 stimuli. The lessened response to a repeated stimulus is called habituation, a process that both humans and animals are known to experience. For example, you might become habituated to the sound of your heater at nighttime, hearing it at first but growing used to the noise after a while and falling asleep. So fetuses do have some memory, but whether or not it influences you later in life, doubt. But the prenatal aspect of the mind came as an entire surprise to Dianetics. Everything in Dianetics is an entire surprise. Dianetics had to invade cytology and biology and form many conclusions by research. It had to locate and establish both the reactive mind and the hidden engram banks, never before known before it came upon prenatal problems. It had been discovered that the engram recording was probably done on the cellular level and that the engram bank was contained in the cells. Which cells? Brain cells? Nerve cells? What cells are we talking about? There's all kinds of cells. You keep saying on the cellular level. What does that mean? It was then discovered that the cells reproducing from one generation to the next within the organism apparently carried with them their own memory banks. The cells are the first echelon of structure and the basic building blocks. Yes, we know this. They built the analytical mind. They operate as the whip, the reactive mind. Where one has human cells, one has potential engrams. There are so many different kinds of human cells. Can you be just a little bit more clear on what cells we're talking about? Just all our cells are filled with engrams? Dianetic therapy is concerned with engrams, not memories, with recordings, not experience. Fuck you and fuck you and fuck you and fuck you for using words that don't need to be used. And wherever there are human cells, engrams are demonstrably possible. Demonstrably possible. Please demonstrate to us how they are possible. And when physical pain was present, engrams can be demonstrated to have been created. Demonstrate them. Demonstrate them. I demand a demonstration. That was the synopsis. We're not even in the book yet. Like, what the fuck was that? That was not a synopsis. How was that a synopsis? Run. Who gave you a computer? Who gave you a pen? Who gave you anything? Why did they teach you to read? So we've just gone through the synopsis. Now we're going to go through the introduction, which is the how to read this book section. As if we haven't already been reading this book. How to read this book. Dianetics is an adventure, a really tedious and nonsensical adventure, nothing like Lord of the Rings. It is an exploration into terra incognita, the human mind, the vast and hitherto unknown realm, half an inch back of our foreheads. Very poetic, but doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense. The discoveries and developments which made the formulation of Dianetics possible occupied many years of exact research and careful testing. This was exploration. It was also consolidation. The trail is blazed, the routes are sufficiently mapped for you to voyage in safety in your own mind and recover there your full inherent potential, which is not, we know now, low, but very, very high. As you progress in therapy, the adventure... Stop calling it therapy. This is not therapy. The adventure is yours to know why you did what you did when you did it, and to know what caused those dark and unknown fears which came in nightmares as a child, to know where your moments of pain and pleasure lie. This is so unnecessary. Anyone who is considering this is so unnecessary and so unhealthy. Like, mentally, so unhealthy for you. Like, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but just from a surface level understanding of mental health, this is so unhealthy for you. There is much which an individual does not know about himself, about his parents, about his motives. Some of the things you will find may astonish you, but for the most important data of your life may not be memory, but engrams, again with the engrams in the hidden depths of your mind, not articulate but only destructive. You will find many reasons why you cannot get well, and you will know at length, when you find the dictating lines in the engrams, how amusing those reasons are, especially to you. Dianetics is no solemn adventure. For all that it has to do with suffering and loss, its end is always laughter. So foolish, so misinterpreted, there are things which cause woe. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I have something to say, and I'm actually quite upset at this point. When you go to therapy, so when you go to counseling, or you go to cognitive behavioral therapy, or any other kind of therapy, the point of the therapy, or the initial goal, is not to clear all your problems. It's to look at the problems that you have and then individually, through questioning, find the tools to resolve them, let them go, or reinterpret them. When you go to cognitive behavioral therapy, which I went to for anxiety, it was about looking at the anxieties that I had, what triggered them, and what I could change behaviorally instead of just reacting in the way that I was reacting. Something that was caused by my PTSD was that I used to see the faces of like my family members everywhere, even though they weren't there. They were never there, but I used to see their faces everywhere, and it would really freak me out because I didn't want to see any members of my family. And it was all about triggers, and it was all about giving time for healing. The first time you go to therapy to the 50th time you go to therapy, like as not, you usually won't come out of there laughing and smiling, because that is not the point of therapy. The point of therapy is to unload what you've been holding inside, and that is never a joyous thing, and it's never something that you're going to walk away from therapy and be smiling about. It's always going to be something heavy that you discuss. Most of the time when I came out of therapy, I was crying. You know, I would be feral hungry. Like, I would just want to eat chicken, because I would feel like I had completely scooped things out of myself that I had just never dug into because I'd been pushing them down for so many years. And the suggestion that Dianetics will have you scooping these things out of you, and then you'll be happy and joyous afterwards, is a ridiculous thing to expect from anybody. And it borders on abusive. If you think about these auditors who will be stuck with these patients or these clients for an uncounted number of hours that you pay for, that the client pays for, on an hourly basis, and they will dig and dig and dig into memories that never existed. until the client feels satisfied with themselves and is happy, it just sounds extremely abusive to me. And I don't want to make light of that. And I know I started this video in a very light-hearted way, but I'm actually quite upset about what I've read today. Like, quite upset about what I've read. And I don't like what I've read. I don't know how many episodes I want to do of this, because I just don't know if there's a benefit. Like, we've already established in the very first episode that perhaps Dianetics is not a very factual and, you know, coherent read, and that was ha funny. But when we're talking about playing with people's mental health, that is a scary idea. That is a really scary idea. And I hope that anyone who's in this religion or cult or wherever you want to call it finds their way out, because that sounds like such a sad way to frame your life, and people are worth more than that. So yeah, thank you for joining me in this video. If you enjoyed this, or, you know, watched this and you know, gained something from it, please do leave a like. Remember to share, remember to subscribe. I'm almost at 2,000 subscribers, so please do leave suggestions down below for what you would like me to do to celebrate receiving 2,000 subscribers. And if you would like to support me in a more monetary way, I have a PayPal, Patreon. My Amazon wishlist is also down below. I recently acquired a Switch, and I have some games that I've been playing on there, and I'm trying to figure out how to stream, but it's a Switch Lite, so I don't think it has like a capture card in it, or a video output, so I don't know what to, I'm not a techie person, so I don't know how to do that. But yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you on Friday for Simp Warfare. And it's going to be a very interesting Simp Warfare video, because I have possibly too many screenshots. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.